What's up, everybody? I'm Dr. Jordan Taylor, Undergraduate Exercise Science Program Director and Associate Teaching Professor at the University of Kansas. I'm here with Dr. Andy Fry, Professor at the University of Kansas and Director of the Jayhawk Athletic Performance Laboratory. We're going to provide a tour of his lab today, discuss the type of research conducted in the lab, and talk about some of the equipment and instruments that are used in this lab for research purposes. Okay, so Dr. Fry, tell us about the type of research you conduct here in the Jayhawk Athletic Performance Lab, and then why that research is important.
Well, we focus on sports science here, and one thing that many people may not understand is that sports science and exercise science are not identical. They're related, they share a lot of topics and there's a lot of overlap, but sports science focuses on sport performance and how do you optimize athletic performance. And so that is the goal. How do we make you a better basketball player? How can we help you become a faster sprinter or to perform up to your potential? Exercise science is broader. It could involve health, general fitness, recovery and rehab, nutrition and all kinds of things of that nature. Terrific area. Sports science focuses on sport performance. Right. And one of our charges here is we're part of a larger research group that our mission is to study elite athletic performance and the training that it takes to get there, or how to help a human reach their potential. And what is it about the best of the best that makes them different? Why do people set world records? They're clearly different from everybody else in the world, and try to understand what the potential of humans is.
Right, makes sense. It's like sports science is just this branch off the exercise science tree.
Exactly.
Right, yeah. All right, Dr. Fry, so let's talk about some of the equipment, the instrumentation you have in this lab. Really cool stuff. Talk about how it works, what you're, testing with some of the equipment. And we have Yang here, first-year Ph.D. student here at KU that's going to be doing some demonstrations on this force plate.
Yeah, so one of the things, Jordan, that we're very interested in is we like to study resistance exercise. And that is a training method that comes in many shapes and forms. So one of the things we like to do is we like to measure what the actual forces are that are produced when people do the lifting. We like to measure the forces, the velocity of the implement, in this case a barbell, the power that's produced, all the mechanical features, the impulses, the momentum, the work, etc. So one thing we do here is what Yang is sitting or standing on is our force plates. And so these are devices that actually measure the pull of gravity and the forces that Yang applies into the ground. And while he's doing that, these force plates are interfaced with computers, and we'll show you the tracings that come off of it. But we sample 1,000 times a second, so we get a lot of precision here. And we're set up here on this platform because we have this force plate here, so we can measure the ground reaction forces. Yang, if you want to just put your finger on the little wire that is attached here, so you can see a little flag on it, that actually measures the position and the velocity of the bar while it's being lifted. So we collect data from that, and so we'll also talk about some of the other tools we use. But I'm going to go back to the computer.
And maybe why are coaches interested in this, other sports scientists? What's the, the importance of it?
Well, good question. Why do we care?
Right.
In this case, he's going to do a squat. Well, there's a lot of different kinds of squats. What is your stance? Wide, medium, narrow? Do I have my heels up or down? Should I have my feet flared out, or should they be straight? Should I let my knees go past my toes? Should I keep that from happening? Is the bar high on the back, low on the back? Is it a front squat? Is it a different type of front squat? Is it a Zercher squat? Do I use a natural squat bar, et cetera, et cetera? Do I do partial range of motion? Do I do high velocity, low velocity?
Yeah.
You name it, a lot of variations. They're not all identical. And so we want to find out how much difference there is, which helps the coach make the right decisions as far as which ones to use.
It's important for program design, implementing a training program.
Exactly.
It's got a lot of there's a lot of reasons why you may look at those different types of squats. So I think you're probably going to just demonstrate just a barbell back squat. Is that what you were thinking? Okay.
Yeah, so we'll have them do a high bar squat. They'll go down to parallel and stand back up. I'm going to go back to the control center where all the data goes in, and we'll be able to see the tracings of the top line is going to be the force. The second line is going to be the velocity of the bar. And the third line is going to be the power that's being produced by Yang.
So black line force, green line velocity, and the red line is the power output. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you can head over there. I'll step back here with Yang and let you go over to the screen there, and we can monitor what's occurring as he does this barbell back squat. So
okay. So Yang, if you want to step under the bar and step back to the white line, and we'll let him set up. And he's holding nice and stable. Okay, anytime. Okay, go ahead and do one more rep. Okay, so you can go ahead and rack it. And what I'm going to do is come back to this first repetition. And I'm going to make this where we can see it a little bit better. And so what we have over here, if you can see, this is the force that Yang is producing. So that's very much like standing on your bathroom scale. And then when he begins to descend, and we know he's descending because the green line shows negative velocity. So he is descending, and then he is going to be ascending because now he has positive velocity. And so the force goes down as he's descending. There's a little bit of vibration in the bar, and then this is the force that he's producing. For him, this is a fairly light weight. And then down here is the power he produces. So most of the time, we're going to be interested in this shaded area, which is going to be right in this area here. And so this is the shaded area, and it shows his velocity in the green, the force he's producing, and then the power that he's producing there. And so we can get very precise numbers. So we're able to look at the data when he's descending or the eccentric phase, when he's ascending, or any point along the way. And we can come back later and then evaluate to get even more data from it. Now, one thing I'll point out, this is a fairly high-tech setup here, and it's expensive. There are alternatives. So you'll notice over here, there's a small tether that attaches to the bar, and this is feeding data into a much cheaper system that doesn't require a force plate, but we can get the velocities and the powers coming off for every repetition here. This happens to be called a Tendo, very handy, very portable. We didn't have it set up, but back here, if we had turned it on this touchpad, is a motion capture system because we have three-dimensional cameras that come down and can track the barbell. And so without having any wires or tethers, it will give immediate feedback on the screen on the bar velocity and the bar power. And all that information goes into the cloud for the coach to evaluate Yang's workout and make whatever adjustments are important. And if you don't want to use those systems, you can take your cell phone that's in your pocket here, and if I download the right software, the same company that makes this system, I put my cell phone back here, and you can download free software that tracks the bar and gives you velocities and powers. And so you can be at home at your home gym, or we can put several of those in a shoebox and take it on the road, or equip the entire weight room fairly inexpensively.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. Technological advances. All right, so I've brought in Minh Nguyen, pronounced it correctly. Okay. New first-year Ph.D. student from Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. So you enjoying your time here so far, working for Dr. Fry?
The best.
Okay, he has to say it, right?
Good answer.
His mentors were standing right here.
It's a good answer.
Okay. So what we're going to do, we're going to show you 2 different types of jumps that are commonly performed, and we're going to compare the force, the velocity, and the power profiles between these 2 different jumps. So it's common to see a squat jump or a counter movement jump being performed, right? And we're going to look at how the force, the velocity, and the power output differ. So go ahead and make your way around back here, men. And I think Dr. Fry is going to head over to the screen, and we're going to look at the data. So now a squat jump, yeah, you can just face straight ahead. So a squat jump is a jump where you're going to start at the bottom, okay? So there's no counter movement, right? And so we're going to look at, which jumping technique might be more effective in terms of producing more force, power, velocity, all those parameters that I've mentioned before. So a squat jump, he's starting at the bottom, right? So we're basically eliminating a stretch reflex here, and there's no counter movement, all right? So I guess whenever you're ready and whenever Andy has things set up.
Run for a second so we get a clean trick.
Okay, so we'll just hold on.
Okay, hold real still, men. All right. And wait for my signal, and then I want to try to record it where I can get both on the same in the screen. So
okay,
we'll do one and stop, hold still, and then I'll give you a signal again to go.
All righty.
Okay, ready?
So get in your squat jump. Whenever you're ready, jump.
Okay. Now go ahead and do a counter movement.
So counter movement. So now there's going to be more arm action involved. There's going to be a pre-stretch of his quads and his glutes and his calf muscles. So whenever you're ready to do this counter movement,
Oh, is there going to be arm swing or no arm swing?
Arm swing.
Okay, the whole thing.
Yeah, whole counter movement. Like you're going to do a vertical jump, jumping as high as you possibly can, using your arms. Yep.
Start with your arms overhead. We'll really exaggerate.
Yep.
Okay. Ready?
So this is the counter movement jump.
Oh.
Yeah. We're going to look at those 2 profiles. So you see with the counter movement jump, he's really using the arms to generate some momentum. There's a pre-stretch of his quads, his glutes, his calves. You can think of those muscles kind of as like rubber bands. They're going to lengthen out. And then when he explodes up off the ground, some of that stored energy, it's almost like elastic recoil, is going to allow him to jump higher than the squat jump. And you can see this. You're going to see this on some of the data that Dr. Fry is going to go over.
So what we see on the curve here, this is just the force curve. And so Min began to decrease his force, which allows him to start his dip. He actually did have a little bit of a dip on it. But then he comes up, and then here he's airborne. And this is just the vibration of the force plate. And then he lands over here. The landing force is way higher. When he used his arm swing and did a more forceful counter movement, you notice the force came down, and the peak force was almost the same, but notice how wide it is. The area under this curve is related to how high he jumps. And so by using the counter movement, by using his arms, he ended up, we don't have the value here for how high he jumped, but just looking at this, we know he jumped higher. And so we can actually measure and understand different ways to jump and how the body works, and determine what's the best way to jump for different athletes in different sports in different situations.
And Dr. Fry made a good point. A lot of people think, oh, you'd probably produce more force, put more force into the ground and get a greater ground reaction force when you jump off of the force plate, but it's actually landing. And so you see it there on that highest peak where the landing force is actually greater than the concentric explosion off of the force plate. Just kind of interesting stuff that, a lot of people may not think about. And that's why it's important. And, if you're a strength coach, you're an athlete, being able to have the strength to handle and absorb those impact forces when you're landing, that's very important for terms of injury prevention and other reasons. But anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, you're exactly right, Jordan. And the one thing I will point out, this is a pretty big setup. We do have portable force plates too. And for example, here at the University of Kansas Athletic Department has a number of force plates. They do this kind of measurement on their athletes all the time because it helps them to track where, the status of each athlete and make modifications.
Oh, and for example, like obviously this was a bilateral movement, both the squat and then the squat jump and the counter movement jump that were performed, and the force of both feet together were being measured. But you can get force plates where you would have one under the left foot, one under the right foot, and then you could look at, well, are we producing a lot more force with one leg into the ground than the other? I mean, maybe the athlete was coming off of an injury and the injured leg hasn't quite caught up to the non-injured leg, so you can look at asymmetries and maybe force production between one leg or the other. I know that they have that over in the athletics department as well. So there's a lot of things you can look at with these force plates for, program design and tailoring a program that's specific to the needs of the athlete.
Exactly. 100% right.
We're just trying to educate you and help you understand. All right, Dr. Fry, so can you discuss some of your favorite studies that you've conducted in the lab and then what the findings of those studies were? So maybe just highlight a couple. I mean, I know there's tons of studies going on in this lab in all different areas, but maybe just a few that you could talk about.
Well, I'll talk about a few that are going on right now. Almost everything we do is pretty fun. We're in the middle of a series of studies looking at blood flow restriction as a method of training. And some of you may be familiar with this type of training where you use some kind of bands, or it's not really a tourniquet, but you restrict the blood flow to arms or legs while you're doing exercises like resistance exercise. Right. And a lot of
travels the blood in the muscle, the occluded muscle.
Yeah, it occludes it. And so some of the questions are related to, is it an effective training method? And who would it be best suited for? What are the situations? Is it better than regular resistance exercise? One of the things that we're looking at, and Drake Easterhout, one of our third-year doctoral students, is in the middle of a series of studies to try to understand, okay, what are some of the underlying mechanisms? If it is effective, one of the questions is, why?
Right.
And because you don't use very heavy weights, it's not very comfortable. It does put less of a load on the joints and the skeletal structure, but and so he's looking at what the autonomic nervous system's response is to that kind of training, and we have some hypotheses on the role that may take. So that'll be going on for the year.
There's a lot of theories about how it works. Is it metabolite buildup? Is it, I've seen research on, is it, you build up a lot of lactate and maybe that triggers growth hormone release? I mean, but all this is just theories at this point as far as the mechanism of it. So you're really trying to answer that question, why this is beneficial. And it's interesting because they're using blood flow restriction training now in physical therapy clinics, clinical populations, athletes are using it. And like you said, it's very low load, maybe using 30% of your 1 rep max, but occluding blood, trapping it in the muscle, and a bit painful and very, very fatiguing. But like you said, is that better than your good old heavy resistance training, lifting 80%, 90% of your 1 rep max? So that's really interesting that they're digging into that.
And you kind of touch on an interesting point. A lot of the research out there looks at different training methods, and in some cases, they may not be terribly effective, but in other cases, it's like maybe there's evidence it's just as effective as what you might call normal training, but I've yet to find something out there that is better.
Right.
Which means, okay, is this a training method that would it be an advantage to me to use? Depends on the scenario.
And the person, the trainee, it's like, I could see it definitely being beneficial for older adults, maybe untrained individuals. They haven't done much heavy strength training before. But then I go back, I'm kind of like you, I'm thinking, man, there's just something about good old fashioned strength training. And maybe this could be used as an adjunct to it. For instance, maybe you're wanting to drop the weight down, deload a little bit. But it'll be interesting to see what Drake finds with all that work.
And you also touch on an important aspect, because oftentimes people do look at the aging and the elderly, and they think, okay, I can get a good training effect without having to go as heavy. On the other hand, with that population, you also have increased incidence of cardiovascular
stroke. So the blood clots,
like,
yeah.
That's why you have to think real carefully on
Right.
who's using that. Another line of research that we are very heavily involved with is, of course, we're University of Kansas, is basketball. And so our associate director, Dr. Dmitry Chabarkova, heads up our basketball agenda. And so we have a lot of studies that have looked at shooting techniques, free throw, 2-point, 3-point, men, women, professional level, collegiate level, younger levels, and whether it's shooting technique, whether it's the physiology and the sprinting speed and the explosiveness, how do basketball players respond during actual basketball games. We've been fortunate enough to actually measure things such as the lactate response during actual games, which you can't go to the NBA and do that, and we can't go to one of our games over in Allen Fieldhouse and do it because it would interfere with the game. But in a laboratory setting, we're able to create game situations, and we can look at that. And we've got a very active agenda on basketball and a number of other sports. That rowing is an area that I have no history in and really didn't understand it, but we've had an opportunity to work with experts that really do know that sport, and that's just another example of kind of an exciting direction we're going.
And I know when you spoke about Dr. Chabarkova, I had him on another YouTube video, but he talked about with some of his research that was done right here in the Jayhawk Athletic Performance Lab, looking at, what predicts proficient shooters versus shooters that are non-proficient, right? And he was looking, like you said, at all these different parameters, things that you had examined, release height, elbow release height, how much trunk flexion? Do you have a more upright trunk, or should you be leaning more forward? What's going to predict all these different parameters that you're more likely to make a shot or miss a shot at different distances? Free throw, 2-point shot from the elbow, 3-point shot. I mean, it's really cool. And then it's like, you got to boil that down, like Dmitry talked about, Dr. Chabarkova, and how do we make this all digestible for a coach? Because then you can get caught up in the data too, where there's like paralysis by analysis. So it's like you use the data in the lab, and then you have to take that data and apply it to your athletes so that they're not thinking on the court. I mean, they can't be out there thinking about, my release height and elbow angle and my trunk lean and my knee flexion and all that. But you can develop coaching cues from that, and that's what the coaches want to enhance performance on the court.
And, I'll point out what we're finding out, many coaches already know because they have vast experience. And through trial and error, they have gravitated to some of the things we're finding. What we're doing is supporting some of these things,
right?
And finding out, okay, which factors, at least in our data, seem to be most important. One thing I also point out in this: anytime you deal with sport, and we bring people into the lab, it's not the real setting. You're not really out on the basketball court. You're not really out on the track. It's not. And you try to simulate it.
It's a controlled environment.
And one of our advisory board members is Coach Mike Dean, who's an exceptional basketball coach, now retired, has over 400 Division I career wins. He knows basketball, and we love it because he helps us design our studies, but also he points out things that we need to do, such as if we're studying shooting mechanics, well, do your mechanics change when you have a defender in your face?
Right.
Do your mechanics change when you have been running up and down the court?
Right.
And you're super fatigued.
It's the second half or the fourth quarter versus the beginning of the game, right?
And so these are things that are on our agenda to pursue, and that's why we value the input from the coach's view, because they help us determine, okay, what are the questions we need to ask, and how do we need to design our.
And that's where the bridge goes both ways with sport coaches, and then you have sports scientists in the lab. It's a two-way street where you can throw ideas back and forth off of each other, validate things that are being used on the court or on the field in the lab. And so, translating that research back and forth and the findings, that's how you advance sports science. I mean, it's a team effort, right, between the coaches, the sports scientists, of course, all the Ph.D. students working in the lab, and, everybody working together. You always get further with whatever you're trying to accomplish, right? So, any other studies you want to highlight? Or maybe what you want to investigate in future research?
We are going to be kind of related to what we looked at earlier on the force plate. We've got a long-term project that's going to outlast me or you or anyone. It's called motionomics. And we're starting out because we want to understand essentially every resistance exercise. And if you extrapolate,
there are hundreds, thousands. I mean, there's so many resistance exercises.
Variations. And so using the force plates, using the other devices here, using the camera systems we didn't take a look at today that actually evaluate the exact body positions, using more advanced algorithms to actually model out which muscles are or are not being used, even the deep muscles that are hard to access. That's a long-term, very in-depth project, and we're not even out the starting gate. But that is exciting. It'll go on for years, and it's also related to any sport task. It's the same question. Here this winter, we'll be doing a baseball hitting study right on these platforms right behind us. Same kind of thing, looking at the different techniques and what are, a good hitting coach knows an awful lot, and they will be part of our research team.
Right.
But we'll have some data. We'll look at what constitutes, what's contributing to the velocity of the ball coming off the bat, and then also understanding exactly what the body's doing. And there's other people that are working in these areas too. We're not alone.
Right.
But it's both of those are really fun areas we're looking forward to.
Yeah, great. All right, so Dr. Fry, how can people contact you if they have questions about your research, your teaching? Maybe they want to come in and see the lab. What's your contact information?
Well, my email is acfry@ku.edu. And we're located in the Robinson Center right across the street from Allen Fieldhouse on University of Kansas campus. We're in room 208. We have regular business hours. You can stop by our entrance in 208. Our doors are always open. At times we're busy, but we welcome guests, people that are curious, and you get a chance to see the fun stuff we do here.
Thanks for giving us this tour today and showing us around, showing us some of the equipment in the lab. Really appreciate it. If you have information about the KU Exercise Science program, you can contact me at jtaylor@ku.edu, or you can call my office, 913-897-8516.